It just happened. Global M1 growth just set off a very important signal. According to this indicator, we are months away from recession. With central banks globally engaging in a quantitative easing slowdown and drawback, there's no way that this will end well. Perhaps they are ready to intentionally collapse the financial system to bring in the next phase. This should be interesting. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at a very important indicator. I'm going to show you the money supply. I'm going to show you what central banks are doing. This is very critical to understand, so let's get into it right away. Global M1 growth has declined substantially, percentage year-over-year change. You can see this chart right now. The yellow line is the global industrial production growth year-over-year, moving into the negative. But I want to focus on the blue line, which is the global M1 growth year-over-year, moving into the negative, which shows us on here at -3. This tells us that we have central banks all engaging in quantitative tightening to some degree. Yes, for example, China has relaxed their lending standards. We've seen that happen multiple occasions. But on a global scale, we have quantitative tightening. The Federal Reserve is doing it, obviously. I'll show you a chart on that in a moment. We see that the ECB has stopped printing money as of December 2018, and they're going to keep theirs at this level. But in general, we do have quantitative tightening that's happening today. As a result of this, the liquidity drying up always ends up in a recession. And we see that happening time after time. I'll show you a chart in a moment where we actually mirror this with the recession. So you'll be able to see it very clearly. But I wanted to focus on this for a moment. The way that the financial system is contrived is that it relies on debt. That is a fact. The more we have this expansion of debt, the more the system can grow. However, as it expands further and further, we have a problem because the money doesn't go as far. $1 created 100 years ago went much further than $1 created in the present day. And of course, we look 50 years into the future, we're going to have a problem with $1 because it's going to be completely worthless. But as central banks begin their quantitative tightening policies, we know specifically what's going to happen. The time in which it occurs is very difficult to predict. There are several indicators which tell us and point to generalities, and it looks like a slowdown will be from here on out, but that could change at any moment because you could have a central bank which then starts to pump up the printing presses and pushes more liquidity into the system. If that happens, you can push this crisis off into the future. But that begs the question, what happened in 2008? If they engaged in quantitative tightening up until this point, let's say 2005, 2006, they see things getting heated, they start increasing interest rates, and then suddenly things start looking bad. But why didn't they immediately print trillions upon trillions of dollars and reduce interest rates down to zero? Because they know that this is a very destructive policy that is a known fact, but they do so in desperation. They've claimed that their monetary easing policies do not create inflation, but I have to ask, why print just a few $trillion when you could print a few quadrillion dollars and you could solve any problem with that? Think about it. I know it's extreme, it's an extreme scenario, but why not print several quadrillion dollars and give it to every institution, every citizen, because you cannot create inflation from printing money. That's what we're told, so why not do it? And this question is not rhetorical, I'm actually asking. What do you think? What do you think would happen if we started printing quadrillions of dollars and handing it out to institutions, domestically, foreign, to individuals? Well, personally, I would ask people in Venezuela, in Zimbabwe, in Yugoslavia, and while I'm at it, Weimar Germany. But of course, we know what will happen. But still looking for your answer for those who believe that it does not create a problem. So this is the way the monetary system works. It's a failed system. It's designed this way because they can maintain control of it. They can completely control everything about it on the way down and on the way up. Year-over-year changes in global QE. This is the central bank balance sheet growth. Obviously, we've moved into the negative. I've been talking about this for what seems like forever, telling you that as of the beginning of 2019, we're going into the negative. And I've shown you a chart similar to this so many times before. Finally, we're here. We are in January 2019, and this has finally happened. So we've gone into the negative. So we'll see how long it takes for the next recession to kick in. But I just wanted to give you an idea of where we are right now and where they expect it to go. And you can see that it starts to turn upward. So I want to make a note of this using my highlighter here. You can see that it goes into the negative. Here we are. And then it turns up. Okay, that's where they expect it to go. And if you look at what happened a few years ago, this was called the earnings recession, which I'll show you more about in a moment. And of course, we had the sovereign debt crisis. It turns up. At the point at which it turns up, that's really where the problem is seemingly the worst. And of course, we had this not even quite hitting that negative point, but almost. And of course, it turned up yet again. So I have a few more interesting charts to check out. So let's take a look at those. And by the way, this is all the different central banks, Fed, ECB, BOJ, and China. All of them basically do the same thing. They sort of react to each other. They are always in communication with each other. But most importantly, the Federal Reserve is seemingly the lender of last resort, even to these other central banks. We know about their currency swaps. They have an open, unlimited, and permanent currency swaps set up with other central banks. I've covered that many times before. Yes, the portfolio balance channel flows are smaller each month. Balance sheet normalization flows each month are less than 50% as large as the QE flows from QE1, 2, and QE infinity or QE3. And this just tells us where we're at today. You can see how it has moved into the negative. This is the quote-unquote normalization. I think it's anything but normal as far as I'm concerned. But this basically just tells us where we're at. And Morgan Stanley provided this chart here, and you could see, just to give you an idea of how it has unfolded over the last little while, whether we're looking at the agency debt or mortgage-backed securities, that's the blue color, and the US Treasuries, which is the yellow. So they purchased different things at different times. So we need to look at both of these because it's not just US Treasuries, but of course they bought a lot of garbage here and they're sitting on it. They're sitting on over $4 trillion, the Federal Reserve alone. So imagine what these central banks, the kind of garbage that they have on their books that they need to get rid of, and how in the world do you expect them to get rid of all of it? Well, even Powell himself recently said they don't expect to get rid of it all. That's a fact. They will bring it down. They're not going to bring it down. They actually said they're not going to bring it down to where it was before the crisis. So it was just under $1 trillion before the crisis. So we know it's not going to get to that level. It's going to be a few $trillion if they're lucky. They had no determination of where it's going to end up, but we're going to see them have to add to that balance sheet at some point. And I don't think it's going to get very far. At the rate that they're doing this, it's going to take forever, what seemingly could be an eternity, before they actually contract this balance sheet to a normal level. Hurdle number 2, talk is cheap. Global M1 growth bottoms on March 31st, 2019. So that's what we're looking at right now in this chart. Will this be the next recession in the coming months? This indicator certainly tells us that that's what we're in for. You can see right here that as this dips down into the negative territory, we had the housing crisis, the financial crisis as a result. Of course, we also experienced the sovereign debt crisis, all right? When it dipped into there, that was a very big problem. Not as much for the US as it was for Europe, but clearly on a global scale, it was very important. We also had the emerging market and manufacturing commodity recession, the earnings recession that we were experiencing a few years ago. This was a problem. Look at China, what they had in 2015 into 2016. Very, very evident that that was a problem. And now here we are today. So whether we are going to experience exactly what we had in 2008, nobody knows. It's all about counterparty risk. That's what people don't understand about this debt. The debt has expanded to a level that people just don't understand what could come of it. Well, there's counterparty risk. You have derivatives. All of this mess is essentially having the walls close in on it, and that's going to put the squeeze on, and it's going to put pressure, and we're going to have problems. Where it's going to come from, nobody knows. A lot of people are pointing to corporate debt. I certainly don't know, but that is a possibility. And then very quickly, I just want want to run through this. Number one, the effective federal funds rate. Currently, as of the recording of this video, we're seeing it at 2.27. This could go up at any moment. This is always changing. They have an upper limit where they're allowed to go, and by the time they get to the end of that particular cycle, they end up hitting the top. This is what they do. Basically, they just bring it up slowly but surely, and that's what they're doing at this point. We are seeing the fact that they have been at the absolute slowest rate that I'm aware of, that they've been increasing these interest rates in modern times. So you can look at that here on the chart if you want. Then of course we have the Fed's assets. Now look how long they kept it at this rate of about $4.5 trillion. It just collected and held at 4.5 trillion for the longest time, and then finally they said okay, we'll start to unwind our balance sheet. We will quote unquote normalize the balance sheet, and you can see that we are still today over $4 trillion worth of garbage sitting on their books. And as this has gone on, the market is simply not really that worried because there's still a lot, and they're doing it at such a slow pace that they're thinking, oh well, we're worried about it later, let's not worry about it now, we have other things to worry about. But slowly but surely this is happening. Now at some point they're gonna stop, and they'll probably continue on with this flat line process, just holding it there for a moment, not to spook the market. And then at some point they're gonna have to engage this at a higher level, in which they've done before. This is right here. You could see in 2008 into 2009 what they did. They spiked this, the hockey stick increase in the amount of money that they had. They brought in QE2, QE3, and you saw where it went. An extremely dangerous policy that could not be turned back, but hey, they seem to know everything. And then right here what we have is the ECB's balance sheet, which has escalated to no end. They were holding $5 trillion worth from what I saw at the end of 2018. This is actually just showing until the end of 2017 on their actual website. They don't even include the up-to-date numbers, but I wanted to give you it from the source just to give you an idea. But it's about $5 trillion if I remember correctly at the end of 2018. Oh, no worries, just $5 trillion, no big deal. But of course, we don't even know what they're doing under the table. We saw what the Federal Reserve had done. It seems to be completely unlimited, but hey, free money for all. Doesn't that sound wonderful? That's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. That's how you support this channel. I see how many views I get. I see how many thumbs up I get. I hope that more people would do so, would just click that button, click that like button, and you're supporting this channel. I really do appreciate every single one of those. So thank you very much for that. If you want the financial education that you were not taught in school, these two books have everything that you need. All you got to do is go to the link in the description, and you'll be able to flip through the pages of these books for yourself. If you want the audiobook version, that's available at themoneygps.com.